Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second session of our course on integral ecology. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. It's so beautiful to be part of the Laudato Si family. A very special welcome to Father PREM KUREETHADAM, who will be moderating our session. After my introduction, I will pass the floor to him. But I would also like to say a word of thanks to our resource personnel today, Sister SHEILA KINSEY, Mr. Mark Charlesworth, and Father Angelito Andri Cortez. So all of you are most welcome. Please allow me to share three simple reflections as introduction to the second session of our course on integral ecology. What we are doing today, the session is entitled The Gospel of Creation. First of all, it is in strict continuity with the first session. The 6 sessions of our course on integral ecology are modeled, are based on the 6 chapters of Laudato Si. The first chapter is what is happening to our common home. And in the first chapter, in paragraph 49, Pope Francis brilliantly captures it as the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. Then he passes on to chapter 2, right in the very first paragraph, chapter 6, paragraph number 62. Please allow me to quote our beloved Pope Francis, who I'm sure from heaven is with us and is interceding for all of us and for the world. Here are the words of Pope Francis at the beginning of chapter 2. Why should this document, addressed to all people of goodwill, include a chapter dealing with the convictions of believers? I am well aware that in the areas of politics and philosophy, there are those who firmly reject the idea of a creator or consider it irrelevant and consequently dismiss as irrational the rich contribution which religions can make towards an integral ecology and the full development of humanity. Others view religion simply as a subculture to be tolerated. Nonetheless, science and religion, with their distinctive approaches to understanding reality, can enter into an intense dialogue, fruitful for both. So this is the first reflection I would like to offer you. We are deepening our dialogue. We are deepening our conversation. In the first session, we saw the physical part of it, the cry of the earth, the various problems that we face, but we also listen to the cry of the poor. It is an ethical, moral crisis. Today, we are going to enter into the spiritual, theological, religious dimension. The second reflection is opening ourselves to this deeper dimension of reality. We are blessed with an integral vision of reality, of the world, of creation. And that's what Pope Francis says in this chapter. I think one of the most beautiful paragraphs of Laudato Si, paragraph 66, where Pope Francis tells us that human life is grounded in 3 fundamental and closely intertwined relationships: with God, with our neighbor, and with the earth itself. So, God, humanity, and creation. According to the Bible, these 3 vital relationships have been broken, both outwardly and within us. This rupture is sin. And today, thanks to our resource personnel, we will be deepening this aspect, this integral vision of reality, but also our sin against God's creation. And the third and the final reflection, this chapter on the gospel of creation ends with some very beautiful paragraphs, 6 paragraphs, if I remember well. And it's entitled The Gaze of Jesus, how Jesus looked at creation. And Pope Francis sort of culminates the chapter with some very beautiful reflections. In paragraph 97, he says, the Lord was able to invite others to be attentive to the beauty that there is in the world because he himself was in constant touch with nature, lending it an attention full of fondness and wonder. Later on, he says, in the Christian understanding of the world, the destiny of all creation is bound up with the mystery of Christ present from the beginning. All things have been created through him and for him. And then he concludes by saying that the risen Christ is present throughout the creation. The creatures of this world no longer appear to us under merely natural guise, because the risen Christ is mysteriously holding them to himself and directing them towards fullness as their end. The very flowers of the field and the birds which Jesus' human eyes contemplated and admired are now imbued with his radiant presence. What a beautiful vision that Pope Francis is proposing us. I wish all of us a very enriching session as, with the help of our resource persons, we reflect on the gospel of creation. And now I invite Reverend Father PREM XALXO, Professor of Moral Theology at the Jesuit Gregorian University in Rome. We are also happy that Father PREM is back, because he was nearly two months in the hospital. All of us missed it, but even from the hospital bed, he joined us last time and he was arranging everything. So we are in very good hands with Father PREM shepherding us through this session. Over to you, Father PREM. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor JOSHTROM. Now let us start immediately with the one short prayer, and that prayer is, we have put as prayer to be the stewards of creation, because as the gospel of creation says, we have to be the stewards of creation. So I invite Miss MARIYA BANAS, our great collaborator of Pontifical Gregorian University, to start with this short prayer.
Prayer to be the stewards of creation. In Laudato Si, Pope Francis reminds us how Jesus took up the biblical faith in God the Creator, emphasizing a fundamental truth: God is Father. In talking with these disciples, Jesus would invite them to recognize the paternal relationship God has with all of his creatures. He was able to invite others to be attentive to the beauty that there is in the world, because he himself was in constant touch with nature, lending it an attention full of fondness and wonder. So now let's pray together. God the Father, creator of heaven and earth, we thank you for the beauty and richness of your creation, for all the creatures, the earth, water, air, trees and flowers, and everything that exists on earth, living and not living. Help us to change our way of life, to respect your creation, and to protect fragile ecosystems. Give us the strength to face environmental challenges and to work together for a more sustainable future. Be the light that illuminates our path and lead us to an awareness of our role in creation. Take us guardian of creation, able to respect and protect it for the integral well-being of all humanity. Help us to be strong and courageous as we struggle to become the stewards of creation. May our struggles and our concerns for this planet never take away the joy of our hope, the joy of being the stewards of your created order. Amen.
Thank you, Maria. Now let us listen to the message from the Rector of the University of Holy Cross, Rome, because we exchanged our chairs together with Professor Arthur Belloc last time. So the Rector of Gregorian University gave the message. Today is the turn of Holy Cross University, so Rector has sent a message. Unfortunately, he could not be here because he is in Philippines, but he was very kind to send a message.
Good afternoon. I'm Professor Fernando Puig, Rector of the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Welcome to this third edition of the Joint Diploma in Integral Ecology promoted by the Pontifical Universities in Rome. I'm happy that this initiative continues to gather so much interest. This shows that we are facing a very important topic and that studying the different phases of the ecologic problem has become necessary if you want to really understand the deep roots of this challenge. Today you will reflect on the second chapter of the encyclical letter Laudato Si of Pope Francis, entitled The Gospel of Creation, the chapter devoted to the theological foundations of the Christian view of integral ecology. I thank you, organizers, speakers, participants, for taking part in this important event, and I hope this moment of study and reflection may be fruitful for you all. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Professor Fernando Puig, for your inspiring message to all of us. Your words as the Rector of the Holy Cross University always inspire and encourage us. Thank you. Now we'll move on immediately to the discourses of our today's session. So I'll give a general introduction to the second module, or the second chapter of Laudato Si, the Gospel of Creation. So I'll try to connect it with Laudato Deum, because it is important what our title says, Integral Ecology from Laudato Si to Laudato Deum. The year 2026 marks the 800th anniversary of the death of St. Francis of Assisi, who inspired Pope Francis to promulgate a groundbreaking encyclical letter, Laudato Si, to address one of the principal challenges facing humanity in our days. This is the remains of St. Francis of Assisi that is being exposed these days. You can see in Assisi. That is important to remember today. Whatever St. Francis of Assisi taught us, that comes to us in a very concrete ways in the form of Laudato Si. Pope Francis' Laudato Si begins with the beautiful canticle of St. Francis of Assisi, Laudato Si mi Signor, or praise to be my Lord, by which he reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us, to live in peace and harmony in a world savaged by conflicts, war, and climate change. In Laudato Si, Pope Francis makes an urgent appeal to renew dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet, and to acknowledge the appeal, immensity, and urgency of the challenge we face. In his apostolic exhortation, Laudato Deum, Pope Francis expresses his concerns in these words: "With the passage of time, I have realized that our responses have not been adequate, while the world in which we live is collapsing and may be nearing the breaking point." He reiterates that the main cause of climate change is anthropogenic, that is, originating in human activities, and warns that despite all attempts to deny, conceal, gloss over, or relativize the issue, the signs of climate change are here and increasingly evident. Showcasing the fundamental causes of the current ecological crisis based on scientific data and incontrovertible facts, Laudato Deum renews the urgent call of Laudato Si to act and commit with full responsibility to safeguard our common home. I have been closely following the lines of thoughts and teaching of Pope Francis since the beginning of his pontificate on the current burning issues, and his constant appeal to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. By choosing the name of St. Francis of Assisi, the man of poverty, of peace, the man who loved and protected creation, Pope Francis put a seal on his prophetic vision of our common home. He emphasizes the urgent need to move forward in a bold cultural revolution by seeking the collaboration of all people, because everyone can cooperate as instruments of God for the care of creation, each according to his or her own culture, experience, involvements, and talents. That is why he invites, encourages, and challenges every person of goodwill to act and react with some concrete initiatives for the care of our common home instead of remaining helpless, skeptical, and indifferent. Now, the gospel of creation, what does it mean? Right in the beginning of the second chapter of Laudato Si, Pope Francis asks a pertinent question. Why should this document addressed to all people of goodwill include a chapter dealing with the convictions of believers? Faith and religions make rich contribution toward an integral ecology and the full development of humanity. As the relational paradigm, integral ecology defines human relationship with God, the Creator, and reminds the Christian faithful that their duty towards nature and the Creator are an essential part of their faith. Why does Pope Francis refers to creation in terms of gospel, the good news? Creation is good news because, as the psalmist proclaims, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Creation is willed by God, is his handiwork, which expresses a design of love and truth and speaks to us of the Creator and his love for humanity, as Benedict XVI writes in Caritas in Veritate. Before creating everything on the face of the earth, God wills and decides to be the Creator. His creating words resonate with his love for every created being, especially for human beings. What he says, let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness. And at the end of every creative activity, the goodness of God of each creation is affirmed and proclaimed. God saw how good it was. In Genesis chapter 1, verses 10, 12, 18, 21, 25, and 31. Because of God's will and creative work, the entire creation came out of nothing in order of love. Love is the vital force and the guiding principle for the interconnected human relationship with God, with fellow human beings, and with all the creatures. As the design of love, the entire creation presents a glimpse of his infinite beauty and goodness of God, the Creator. How God is present in entire creation. Pope Francis' vision of God in all creation comes from the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. Reaffirming the presence of God in creation proposed in spiritual exercises, St. Ignatius later writes to St. Francis Borgia, the fullness of our eternal God dwells in all created things, giving them being and maintaining them in existence by his finite being and presence. The realization of omnipresence of God in creation leads to the contemplation of its beauty and grandeur. John Paul II writes, the aesthetic value of creation cannot be overlooked. Our very contact with nature has a deep restorative power. Contemplation of its magnificence imparts peace and serenity. The Bible speaks again and again of the goodness and beauty of creation, which is called to glorify God. Laudato Si affirms that if someone has not learned to stop and admire something beautiful, we should not be surprised if he or she treats everything as an object to be used and abused without scruple. It brings to the fore how the presence of the risen and glorious Jesus, with his tangible and loving relationship with the world, is active and vibrant. Now, the gaze of Jesus. In the Gospel of Creation, Pope Francis invites all to see creation from the eyes of Jesus Christ. The life, words, and deeds of Jesus Christ demonstrate that he lived in full harmony with creation, not as an ascetic separated from the world, but as a person lived among the people, worked with his hands and preached the good news of the kingdom with the parables related to the ordinary human life. With his exemplary life of love, mercy and compassion, he exhibited the primacy of harmony, justice, fraternity and peace. His life lived among the human and earthly realities of that time, his words and deeds, and in the end, his death on the cross and the resurrection affirm that he was present in the beginning of creation and will be present to the end of the world. The ultimate destination of human beings and all of creation is emancipation in Jesus Christ, when God will be all in all, as St. Paul writes in Corinthians, first letter to Corinthians, chapter 15, 26. And in the end, all will meet face to face with the infinite beauty of God in the eternal bliss. The gospel of creation and integral ecology, the word we use often. Integral ecology as the relational paradigm of interconnection and interdependence amongst human beings and everything that exists on the face of the earth is the heart of Laudato Si. The three pivotal axioms predominantly used in Laudato Si, that is, everything is connected, interconnected, everything is connected, everything is closely interrelated, substantiate the deeper meaning of the gospel of creation. God the Creator as the dynamic connecting force and perennial source of life, sustenance and continuity. Appearing 9 times, that is in Laudato Si, number 10, 11, 62, 124, 137, 156 and 225 and 230, integral ecology presents human reality in an interdisciplinary and holistic way and defines all the dimensions of human life, dignity and existence, demonstrating a more integral and integrating vision of those realities. Integral ecology highlights a cosmic vision of the concept of Imago Dei, according to which the human being is an integral part of creation. Being created in the image and likeness of God, human beings are capable of relationship with God, but not to be like God. They are entrusted with the mission of accompanying and taking care of creation and not subjugating or dominating it, so that they continue to be fruitful and multiply. Therefore, faith in God, the Creator, serves as an impetus to work for the creation. Conclusion. Our common home provides us with a fundamental conduit for relationship, which is built on interpersonal contacts, mutual rapport, and interactions with a firm conviction that human life is grounded in 3 fundamental and closely intertwined relationships, that is, with God, with our neighbor, and with the earth itself. In such an interconnected web of life, it is wise to stop thinking of human beings as autonomous, omnipotent, and limitless, and begin to think of ourselves differently in a humbler but more fruitful way. On the 1st of October 2025, in his address to the participants in the Raising Hope conference on the 10th anniversary of the encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Leo XIV said, "God will ask us if we have cultivated and cared for the world that He created, for the benefit of all, for future generations, and if we have taken care of our brothers and sisters, what will be our answer?" In an interconnected web of life, all those voices, whether human or non-human, which are often ignored and exploited, mistreated and abused need to be heard for the integral human development for reestablishing shalom. That is, the peaceful and harmonious living of all life forms in communion with one another and with God. Such vision can enlighten and encourage to look at creation with fondness and wonder, with the gaze of Jesus to see, judge, and act for the integral well-being of the entire creation, humans and non-humans. Nurtured by faith, the gaze of Jesus must help us to see things as He Himself sees them. With His own eyes, it is a participation in His way of seeing. Inflamed by our hope in Jesus, let us journey through this land as pilgrims of hope, seeking God in union with all creatures. May our struggles and our concern for this planet never take away the joy of our hope. Let us sing as we journey together, journeying in communion and commitment to heal the world and to make it a better place to live for the entire human and biotic community. Thank you. Now we'll have the question and answer session after the presentation of 3 discourses. Now I present SHEILA KINSEY. Now she is the coordinator for the Integrity for Nonviolence program and board member of the Dicastery for the promotion of integral human development. She worked long for the International Union of Superior Generals in the area of ecological issues. Now the floor to you, Sister SHEILA KINSEY.
Thank you for this invitation to be a part of this panel presentation as we continue to explore the gospel of creation. I've been asked to share with you 2 dimensions in this chapter of Laudato Si, the feminine and Franciscan. And throughout this presentation, I will develop the feminine image of wisdom. The importance of developing the feminine, female image of God as wisdom is not done in an effort to disregard the male imagery, but this wisdom imagery can give us an appreciation of ourselves in another way. I will speak of the Franciscan aspects from my precious heritage in relation to the gospel explored in this chapter. Laudato Si includes the development of the Church's social teaching. Regarding social issues. Thereby, this teaching is called to be enriched by taking up new challenges. For in the light offered by faith, if we are truly concerned to develop an ecology capable of redeeming and remedying the damage we have done, no branch of the sciences and no form of wisdom can be left out. And that includes religion and the language particular to it. And so Father PREM so ably talked about this dimension and the importance of it for us. I was delighted when I saw the section heading in the book of wisdom in this chapter. The Lord of wisdom founded the earth. This imagery is an important source of meditation in realizing the importance of the feminine as a life-giving embodiment characteristic of God. Wisdom is personified as feminine in the Old Testament. She is alongside God in the creation of the world. Wisdom has a divine origin, existing before all things. She has creative powers. When God planned and created the universe, adorning it with beauty and variety, and establishing its wonderful order. Each of the various creatures reflect in their own way a ray of God's infinite wisdom and goodness. So that it seems everything God has created is very good. This affirmation of human dignity, of the goodness of all creation is essential to hear when we are asked to take care of all that God has made. Both Laudato Si and Laudate Deum emphasize this importance. Everything in creation is an expression of God. The design, the beauty, the interconnectedness. Harmony was planned. The intimate generativity of God. The womb symbolizes the feminine as a generative, loving power, physically, psychologically, socially, and spiritually. It is a life-giving source. Here, in the most intimate way, with the feminine human connection, human life is formed in a sacred way. God is in the intimate relationship with the womb, the place in the feminine where the creation of life takes place. And it's said in Jeremiah, the Creator can say to each one of us, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. This is the gentle and loving time for a person to come into being. This is to show us the loving way we are conceived in the heart of God. In Psalm 139, this all-knowing and ever-present God is addressed in these words of prayer. You formed my inmost being. You knit me in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My very self you know. These words are for all of us. We celebrate this deep interconnectivity of one another and indeed of all of creation. And near the end of Laudato Si, Pope Francis calls on Mary as the Queen of all creation. When Pope Francis brings to mind the life of Mary, the mother of Jesus, in this way. She treasures the entire life of Jesus in her heart and now understands the meaning of all things. Hence, we can ask her to enable us to look at this world with eyes of wisdom. Compassion and truth. With this understanding of wisdom, we have a God who can be experienced in transcendent, transforming the world, and our lives as well, as a God who is present in the struggles and pain. Wisdom then provides truths that give insights for living life and is the source for integrating these truths in reality. If God is the source, the goal, and fullness of all, then the truth is tested by the extent to which our idea of God can take into account our reality and relate to us in a compassionate way. This desire for a deep relationship with God puts us in touch with God in everyday life. So if we desire wisdom, she will give us the water of compassion to drink, and we will not waver from the truth. The tenderness of God. Since we experienced this compassionate presence, we are to share this tenderness with others. In Deuteronomy, we find this situation. If you chance to come upon a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, and the mother sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, you shall not take the mother from the young. So such actions would be considered in light of the faithfulness to the covenant. Tending to the well-being of earth. This experience of the compassion of God extends to our care of earth. When we till and keep the garden, we are reminded of our responsibility to cultivate, to care, to protect. This implies the mutual relationship between human beings and nature. God has entrusted such a relationship to us. We are to attend to the well-being of earth, for we know that God loves all things that exist. Moving now to St. Francis, the patron saint of ecology. It is significant that the harmony which St. Francis experienced with all creatures was seen as a universal reconciliation with every creature, as a return in some way to the state of original innocence. The wisdom of the beginning age of creation is in the age of innocence. We seek the guidance of St. Francis today because of the destructive powers we are dealing with. St. Francis of Assisi's life, his prayer, and his actions. In the very beginning of Laudate Deum, Pope Francis briefly summarizes the importance of St. Francis as an example for us. And in this way, St. Francis accepted the invitation of the biblical Psalms and reflected the sensitivity of Jesus before the creatures of his Father. The prayer to the creatures, Francis includes an overarching praise in the feminine. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produce various fruits and colored flowers and herbs. So beautiful and radiant, Brother Sun, clear and precious, Sister Moon and the stars, cloudy and serene, Brother Wind, humble and chaste, Sister Water, playful and robust, Brother Fire. St. Francis provides guidance in contemplation. And if we follow his patience for contemplation, then we can understand that contemplation of creatures that allows us to discover in each thing a teaching which God wishes to hand on to us. And in his declaration for the Jubilee year, Hope, Pope Francis' message was to us to see the clarity and vision of St. Francis for all of creation as seen as a great family. And Pope Leo has continued on with this message. The destiny of all creation is bound up with the mystery of Christ. For Franciscans, the Incarnation is the major feast. The Word of God become flesh to dwell among us, to teach us how to live. St. Francis took the example of how Christ lived and literally tried to follow the way so as to be like Christ. With a deep sense of communion. Everything is interconnected, as Pope Francis often reminds us. In reflecting on this part of the canticle, Pope Francis reminds us of the importance of having both a concern for the environment and a concern for our fellow human beings in our commitment to resolve problems. In the story of the Wolf of Gubbio, St. Francis works out an agreement for peace and nonviolence. The people feed the wolf, and the wolf doesn't harm anyone. In Pope Leo's January letter to the Ministers' General Conference on the occasion of opening the 8th centenary of the death of St. Francis, Pope Leo has this prayer for the perfect joy and harmony of St. Francis. And he says this: in this time afflicted by conflict and division, St. Francis, intercede for us so that we may become peacemakers, unarmed and disarming witnesses of the peace that comes from Christ. And in this special Jubilee, he wants us to witness to the holiness of St. Francis in our lives. Here is another fresco by Giotto with the scene of St. Francis receiving the stigmata on the Mount of Laverna. He wanted to experience in himself that same love Christ had for the way he was able to give himself to others. Imagine if that would be our prayer. It is in this loving way of life in which Francis reconciled the world. His way of reconciliation was a relationship that returned to the original innocence of the place of wisdom. He was a reconciler of all things, for in him, this is Jesus, all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace for the blood of his cross. And we are reminded of our commitment to be as Christ in these words of St. Paul to the Corinthians. It is at his initiative, that is Christ, that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become wisdom from God to us, justice, sanctification, and redemption. This verse points out that Jesus Christ is the embodiment of divine wisdom, and that those who follow him are receiving God's wisdom in their own lives. We are to be life givers. Thank you.